Here I go, here I go, here I go. Yeah, here I go, here I go.
All right, what's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Take Podcast. I'm your host, Jackson Burleson, of course. And in today's episode of UFC Boxing Talk number 5, guys, I got Randy Silver joining me on the podcast.
How y'all
Appreciate you
doing?
hopping on, dude.
I appreciate you having me on. This could be a fun episode.
So we're going to get right into it with Francis Ngannou versus Tyson Fury. It was a controversial decision to most of the boxing world. But in my opinion, it looked controversial watching the fight live. And then after that, I rewatched the fight last night. And it wasn't as controversial as I originally thought. I thought Tyson Fury was landing the jabs, just winning him by points in the boxing style. But I definitely think Francis Ngannou landed the more significant power shots. I think anyone who watched the fight could clearly tell. I want to hear your opinion on that because there was a lot of hubbub going around. Like, did Francis get robbed? Which I initially thought in the beginning, but now rewatching the fight, I think Tyson Fury just barely squeezed it, just barely.
So a little bit about myself really quickly. I'm a big combat sports fan. So I will be able to bring a lot of facts and some cool stories to y'all. And thank you again for having me on. I only watched the fight once. I was busy when the fight was going on. I was commentating a soccer game, so I watched it back later in the evening. I thought Francis won. I think in round 3 where Francis knocked down Tyson, that was a 10-8 round.
Yeah, absolutely. They scored it. Like all 3 judges scored that as a 10-8 round. So I would say 100%. Like, you were definitely correct on that. And like that left hook, whoo,
brutal. His power from MMA translated over. And leading up to the fight, Tyson talked about he was training hard. He was not taking this easy, but he had the whole Usyk fight already booked. He said it was not his decision to release it early. But when you already know you're looking forward to such a massive, true boxing match, not a crossover, even though Francis is a boxer, this is called crossover for the time being, your eye's not going to be on the prize as much.
Yeah.
I think Francis caught him and surprised him. And I thought the cool thing was I had Francis winning 65-64.
Yeah. And factor in Mike Tyson as well. Mike Tyson was training Francis Ngannou for this fight. And I think Mike Tyson training him like helped him close the distance because Tyson Fury did have a reach advantage, which was a pretty big factor like in the beginning of the fight, especially in the first round because he was just kind of jabbing him up, which is only punch he was kind of really able to work because that right hand wasn't there for Fury much. It was kind of just the jab. He was able to keep him away, but Francis did not care. He was walking him down. He did not care at all.
Francis is massive. He's a big human being. And Tyson, everyone he fights, he likes to really lean on people, make his weight get on you. Why would someone want to do that in boxing? Because you're trying to punch. And those later rounds of the fight, when you lean on someone, they're going to be exhausted, tired, heavy arms. Francis, multiple times you saw, pushed them off. And Tyson looked like, he was like, what the heck? And so in those later rounds, yes, Francis probably after round 6 looked like he was getting tired first time in a true boxing match, but it wasn't as probably mentally and physically defeating as Tyson thought. And you saw Tyson was very
To be
skittish.
honest, though, I didn't think Francis looked that tired. I mean, I feel like he could have won 12 rounds, to be honest.
His pace slowed down.
But I feel like he could have won if it went 12 rounds. I'm just being honest. Like,
in most of the judges' scorecards, he lost 9 and 10. If you're the one of those rounds, he wins the fight. I think in hindsight, he talked about this in a post-fight interview. He wished he would have pushed harder in 9 and 10. He said that in rounds 1 through 3, because he'd never been in a boxing match before. He didn't know how he was going to feel in 7 through 10. He did not go as hard as he should have, and he lost rounds 1 and 2. In hindsight, he said he wished he would have fought much harder in 1 and 2 because he felt good at the end, but it was a little bit too late, and he didn't get enough action at the end as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing was, like, with Francis Ngannou, like, we knew coming in that he had the nuclear bomb with both of his hands. Like, we knew he had that one-punch chance, like, to win the fight, and, like, it landed, but after the knockdown, like, yeah, he was still piecing him up sometimes, but it just seemed like he was getting boxed, like, during the fight live. Like, you have totally 2 different perceptions. Like, I literally thought he won, and I was like, wow, like, Fury just got away with the one, like, split decision. Like, I mean, but for him to just go in there, he's never boxed before, it's impressive. And now he's, like, getting talked about being ranked, like, in the top 10 for heavyweights. Like, I mean, that's
his
that's
next
insane.
fight's either going to be a top MMA person, but more likely than not, it's going to be a top boxing person, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yep.
But 1% of 1% can stay out there with Fury for 10 rounds, and he did it.
That was probably Fury's toughest fight besides Wilder, like since Klitschko. Honestly, that he's like really been tested. Like Wilder has the power that Francis Ngannou has, but I think that's the toughest fight that Fury. And you can tell like in the post like fight, like I don't know, I just got the sense that since he did sign the deal to fight Usyk in the same arena in December or January, that's not going to happen December. But
they've already announced that Usyk and Fury is being pushed to February. So
yeah, that's
official. And Usyk talked about during the fight, he was very scared that something like this was going to happen. They cut to him when Tyson got knocked down, and his face became a meme. It was hilarious. He was like, "Oh, my millions of dollars going down the drain."
And like you got Tyson Fury, who's got a shiner, and then Francis didn't even look like he fought. Like you look at the side by side pictures, you're just like,
if he's a good editor right now, he'll overlay to our words the picture of Tyson the day after in Francis. It's crazy. Tyson's got a nice little black eye.
Yeah, that thing's shiny, man. And then you put that thing in good lighting, it's over, dude. And going back to what I was saying, I feel like Tyson Fury underestimated Francis a little bit, in my personal opinion, because he thought it was going to be a cakewalk fight because the guy's an MMA fighter, and no one's really like Conor McGregor was the only guy that really gave an MMA fighter, like a boxer, a hard time as an MMA fighter. But Francis, he showed the whole world that he is a boxer. He can be an MMA guy, and he can also be a boxer, kind of like you were saying earlier. He proved the world wrong.
I would like to dispute that Conor gave Floyd a tough time.
Bro, you watched that fight? Conor was hitting him with some nice uppercuts.
I think Floyd carried him through. If Floyd wanted to put him out in the second round, he could have.
But Floyd doesn't have that knockout power. He never has. Never. He's never been able to knock somebody out. He puts his hands up, he tires you out, and then he starts hitting you when you're fatigued. He's never been the guy to go in for the knockout. He's not. That's just not the fighter he is. Like if you look at Tyson Fury, he is the Floyd Mayweather of the heavyweight division. He's a defensive boxer. He has elite head movement. Dude, the guy moves like a middleweight, and he's 270 pounds.
His head movement is unreal. But can we talk about Francis for a second? I would love to talk about his story and how he got to becoming a nobody to fighting the world heavyweight champion, the linear world heavyweight champion in the world. Can we talk about that for a second?
Dude, go for it. I mean, I know what you're going to say. So.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how many of you know Francis' story, so let's just do a little story timeline really quick. Francis literally comes from poverty. He born and raised in Cameroon, always had a dream to be a professional boxer. He walked from Cameroon all the way to the top of Africa and was in Morocco.
He crossed the Mediterranean.
Morocco. He did, but it took him 6 times to cross the Mediterranean Sea. He got caught, and every time he got caught, they sent back to Morocco, and Morocco was sent back to the other side of the country.
He would get caught by who would he get caught by? Like the people from other countries?
Yeah, like Water Patrol. So the final time that he finally got caught, it was, I want to say it was the Red Cross found him in the ocean on a raft, and he got taken to put on Spain. He was put in jail for Spain as being an illegal immigrant there. Got out and was like, I need to go to Germany to be able to become a boxer. It was there. On his way to Germany, he stopped in Paris. In Paris, he slept in an MMA gym or a boxing gym, one of the two. And he met someone who was an MMA trainer. Through there, he started training MMA. And he did MMA because he knew he could be more successful there quicker than in boxing.
The story's giving me chills.
So this is like 2014 to 2016. He started in the UFC. And I just want to make sure I say these stats correctly. 1 second. So Francis.
The story's insane. Like
where is it?
It takes a different human being to be able to go from Africa to Europe just walking there. Like it's just that's why he probably has that insane 6-pack and those ripped arms. To be honest, like
so Francis entered the UFC in 2015. His overall record is 17-3. In January 2018 at UFC 220 was his first chance. He got a chance at the title in the UFC, and he lost to Stipe, who we're going to talk about him versus John Jones, by decision. In UFC 226, he then lost to Derek Lewis in the snooziest fest ever. If you want to fall asleep every night, go watch that fight. It's 2 big boys who were so scared of each other's power that they literally did nothing. No one threw punches. It was boring. And they admit it. From there, he rattled off 4 straight wins to get back to the title shot. UFC 260 in March 2021. So now it's basically 5 years since he started fighting. He beat Stipe for a second round TKO to win the title.
I mean, his upbringing's insane. Like,
Yeah.
just the way he became the UFC heavyweight champion, which, I mean, when he was there and when he was the champ, I mean, you can say whatever you want about the amount of money he was getting paid, but he got mistreated. And that's why he left the UFC.
You know how much money he was getting paid?
He was getting paid like, what, $700K in his last title fight? Like, I mean, bro,
So-
like, that's nothing.
Great. You're leading me on. UFC 270 in Anaheim, 2020. I was at that fight because I lived in San Diego at the time. I was at that fight. He fought Cyril Gane. He lost the first 2 rounds and won the final 3 rounds to win the fight by decision. And it came out after the fight. He fought on a torn ACL and MCL. The whole
In
fight.
both knees. Both knees.
No, one knee.
No, it was
the
both
two.
knees. He had knee pads in both knees.
Yeah, but maybe it was MCL one knee, but it was ACL was only one knee. I know that for a fact.
No, I'm talking about he had like knee injuries in both of his knees.
Okay. His contract was up after that fight. Again, he signed his contract before he became champion. So as a champion, he was getting pay-per-view because that's a given. But he was only getting paid a base of $500,000, $700,000, whatever. So he got knee surgery and was out for 12 months. Now this pushes us to January 14, 2023. Francis was let go from the UFC.
Well, he got offered, like, I think Dana offered him the biggest contract in UFC heavyweight history. He would have been the highest paid heavyweight in the history of the UFC, and he turned it down.
He would have been the highest paid heavyweight in the history of UFC. But in comparison, what is that to the money you make in boxing?
It's nothing.
Nothing. Also, Francis was having other demands. He wanted health insurance for all the fighters. UFC's not going to do it. He wanted fighters to be on the board of the UFC. Active fighters, be able to have a word.
Yeah, like a fighters union.
There's other stuff that he wanted that if I'm coming back here, it's not just me. I'm trying to pull up the whole fighters. They said no. So Francis walked. When Francis walked, what happened next? He spoke to the PFL. He spoke to one organization. He spoke to Bellator. He spoke to others. And they all tried to negotiate with him. They all laughed at him and said, "You're asking for too much." Other people said, "You're fumbling in the bag," which he just actually trademarked the saying, "fumbling in the bag." It's become a whole clothing line. So once Francis did all this, people were doubting him, and he came through and said, "I trust myself." In May of 2023, so 5-6 months ago, he signed with PFL.
And now he's going to be head of the PFL Africa, that whole thing they're doing. And that's big for MMA in general, like just letting all those African fighters, get a chance, train in Africa, learn the sport. Like, there's a lot of potential and there's a lot of promise because Francis Ngannou, like in his little village, he's got a lot of guys that look like him that are big and strong. So it's gonna change the sport. Like, it's gonna be very humongous. It's gonna change everything.
And he also is representing the fighters on the company advisory board. Anybody who faces Francis in PFL is guaranteed a $2 million purse. So he's making his opponents wealthy. He's gonna be fighting in the
It's a
super fight division,
yeah,
which is only pay-per-views. Jake Paul and Kayla Harrison, there are other people there.
Yep.
So that takes us to the PFL deal allows them to go to boxing, and they're like, "Who you gonna fight?" Some no name. He's like, "I want Tyson. I want Deontay Wilder. Who am I gonna get?" Everyone
and Anthony
laughed at
Joshua. Anthony Joshua, throw his name in there as well.
Yeah, but he specifically wanted Wilder or.
They were talking about that fight before the Tyson Fury and Ngannou fight were officially signed. They were talking about Deontay Wilder. But the thing with that fight, let's go into those real quick.
Well, you gotta let me finish. You gotta let me finish. So to finish it off, 3 months ago is when they announced the Fury fight, and everybody who talked about Francis, he fumbled the bag. He made the wrong decision. Should have stayed in MMA. You dropped the bag. You should have not put the eggs in one basket on yourself. You proved them wrong. And he said, "I'm not here to just win a contract. I'm here to win the fight." That takes us back to the conversation. Did he win the fight? No. Did he win the public image? Yes. And now he's literally having everybody come to him and say, "I want to fight you. I want to fight you." And he gets to control his destiny. So I give him all the credit. He bet on himself and he won.
Let me ask you this, because I know like the WBC didn't want to have the title up because he's not a ranked boxer. But do you think it should have been up, even though they do have those guidelines in place where you have to be ranked to be able to go for that?
I don't think so. I think if he comes in and he gets opportunity for the WBC title to be on the line, it's a slap in the face. Everyone who's worked their way up through the ranks, win a couple fights, and then get a chance for the belt.
But I mean, big names, they make this money. And literally, like you said, you were explaining it. Francis, even before pay-per-views, before anything else against Fury, He made 10 million. 10 million. Like, that's insane, dude. Like, you're telling me, bro, that's a bag. And now he's going to go fight Deontay Wilder for probably maybe the same amount of money. He's probably not going to make as much in the pay-per-view department, but now everyone wants to see him fight.
Yep.
Can they beat Deontay Wilder? Can he beat Anthony Joshua?
And if you think about after
And I think he
all
can.
all the marketing deals and stuff, he probably made $20 to $30 million. That's more money times 5x he ever made in the UFC.
No, it's actually insane. So which guy do you want to see him fight next? Do you want to see him fight Anthony Joshua, or do you want to see him fight Deontay Wilder?
I want him to do a rematch with Fury.
I would like to see that as well.
And he announced this morning, so great time doing the pod, that he wants to fight Fury. That's the rematch. He's going to try to wait for that. Meaning, if Fury and Usyk are fighting in February, if Fury and Usyk are fighting in February, that means that Francis may wait until next fall to fight. In that time, maybe he does a PFL match in the MMA cage, but really, there's no big name out there, free agent heavyweight.
I don't see him fighting,
so he probably waits
in the PFL.
Now, the one thing is, Eddie Hearn, who runs Matchroom Boxing out of England, says like they want Anthony Joshua to fight. Anthony Joshua is set up to fight Dylan White in January. They fought twice. They fought in 2017. Joshua won. They were supposed to fight earlier this year. White failed a drug test. So now they're trying to remake it. But that fight right now in England is the biggest boxing match between two English boxers. After that fight, we'll see what happens. Deontay Wilder, they said about a mixed MMA boxing match in an MMA cage with boxing gloves, which would be and they may do like
that's ridiculous.
Like no like takedowns. Like you maybe could do kicks. They're going to do like a mixed thing. But Wilder has said that he's training for some type of MMA fight against Ngannou.
That hasn't been done before, though. That would be...
It would be fun.
That would be insane. That would, like, literally change, like... combat sports are already changing with all these crossover fights, but that would just change it forever. Like, if you see a boxer now wanting to do something that's not just boxing, because we've never seen a boxer go in the cage. We've never seen that. Like, all these boxers want these MMA guys to go in the ring.
We saw a wrestler. We saw CM Punk do it.
All right. All right. CM Punk. Okay. So, speaking of the fight, I can't talk about CM Punk.
No, I wasn't going to talk about CM Punk.
I can't. He got obliterated by a guy who wasn't even ranked.
I was say in the PFL, speaking of PFL, I just was on a media scrum for PFL yesterday, and Clay Collard is fighting. He does boxing and MMA. So he has like 15, 20 professional boxing fights. He has over 20 MMA fights. So he has done a nice job going between back and forth.
So do you think the PFL can get to the same level as the UFC? I know it's a tough ask.
No. Yeah, PFL, in all suspicions, is going to be buying Bellator out, which means they'll be taking some fighters and they'll get some of that brand equity. But UFC is a mega titan. Is any football league ever going to take over the NFL? No. So there's going to be a number 2 to the MMA organizations. UFC will always be number 1. In America, you could say worldwide. In Asia, one is bigger than UFC in some cases, but UFC is the pinnacle. PFL is a strong number 2. And what they're doing is unique in the fact that PFL does regular season, playoffs, and championships like traditional American sports, where UFC and other MMA organizations are like.
But you don't think a guy
fights.
like Francis will make other stars from the UFC who are getting taken advantage of when it comes to money? They won't come over and say, hey, Francis got this. Maybe I can get, maybe not something near that, but I can make more money than I can in the UFC. Like, because I think that could be a turning point as well.
What's your favorite burger spot?
I mean, there's a lot. There's too many to pick from, honestly.
I'm
indecisive. I'm indecisive.
All right, what's the biggest football team in America?
I mean, it's got to be the Dallas Cowboys, baby.
So Dallas Cowboys. So say you take the whole Cowboys team and put them on the Carolina Panthers. Does that make the Panthers, because they have the Cowboys players, the new it factor? Or is it the brand that people care?
Of course. It's the brand.
So they take it to what you're saying. Yes, fighters from the UFC may go over the PFL, but that's not the brand. The UFC brand circumvents anything else in the world.
Sure. Yeah, you're right on that. But if you give it 20 years and if PFL keeps getting superstars, I mean, anything can happen. Anything can happen. Like, it's like Patrick Mahomes going to the CFL, which he wouldn't, but That's just a turning point for the PFL to be a big MMA organization.
Well, look at Messi. Messi came from Europe to play in the MLS. Yes, there were viewers, people came, but does it make MLS an overall better organization?
Yeah.
No. It's not going to be above any of the top 5 leagues.
Yeah.
Now, in due time, you're right. In 20 years, are some of the best players going to be there? Potentially. But is it still going to be bigger than the EPL? Probably not. And I think that the PFL talks about they're okay not being number 1. They want to be a solid number 2 and give these fighters better opportunity, equity, and the ability to brand themselves.
100%. Let's move on to Tyson Fury versus Usyk. We kind of mentioned it a little bit. That fight, in my personal opinion, since Tyson Fury didn't really put up a good fight against Francis Ngannou, he didn't look as good as everyone thought. This is a legacy fight for Tyson Fury. If he doesn't win against Usyk, I think his legacy is absolutely tarnished. He's going to have that one loss at the end of his career for the undisputed belt. There hasn't been an undisputed heavyweight champion since 1999. Lennox Lewis. That was the last guy to do it. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. And I think Usyk can do it. He's small. He's a smaller guy. I think he's like 228. But he comes forward. He's not scared of the reach. He's fought guys with bigger reach than he has. And he's a technical boxer. Like, I think if it goes decision, I think Usyk will win the fight just because of how technical he is. But if Fury wants to win against Usyk, I think he has to knock him out. He's got to make a statement.
So Usyk is 21-0 with 14 KOs.
Fury, he beat Anthony Joshua twice, by the way, just to throw that in there.
And Fury's 33-0-1. So
Like
even if
it's history,
Fury lost to Ngannou, which downgrades the fight with Usyk regardless, the fact that you can market it as a heavyweight undisputed championship fight, there's going to be eyes on it.
No, yeah, there will be eyes on it, but I feel like the people who thought that Francis got robbed, I feel like they don't care as much about the fight just because they were like, oh, like, you know, you got the boxer in there throwing elbows. Like, what does that say about Tyson Fury? Like, and I think, yeah, Tyson Fury had a 12-week camp, but right now for February, after the beating Francis gave him a little bit, like, that's not enough time for me. Like, I would rather see that fight in like April or May. Give Tyson Fury a little bit of rest time, and then he can kind of recover, get back into full camp mode. Because Usyk is no joke. Like, Usyk is a good boxer. Like, he cannot toy around.
He hasn't lost.
He
says something.
He can't toy around with him. Like, he just can't. Like, there's no room for error when you're fighting a guy like Usyk. There's no room for error.
The thing with Usyk as well is he's fighting for a bigger cause. If you don't know, he's Ukrainian, so he has that weighing on him and his shoulders. So he talks about that he's fighting for a nation and his people. And regardless of what you feel about the war, we're not getting into politics. That's not the point. Sometimes that can help drive you and give you inspiration when you're training as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when it comes to Tyson Fury, I don't think he's as motivated because he's made so much money.
Made his time, made his money.
I mean, he's already got a bag. Like,
what motivates me though is having that goose egg in the loss column. I would never want to lose that. That transcends you across generations and puts your names in lights forever.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter who you fight. Like, as long as you got that 0 there, you're never going to be forgotten ever. And I think that fight shouldn't be forgotten. Like, Usyk Fury, like, I know people want to brush it off, but I don't think you should forget about that.
Can you name me the last 5 fights Usyk has had?
I don't. Okay, it was Dubois, his last opponent, and then he fought Anthony Joshua twice. I can't name you the ones before that because I don't know their names and they're not big names because that's just how boxing works. Like, there's not a lot of big names in boxing that the public eye would just know. Like,
Correct.
Me and you may know them because we're boxing fans, but not a lot of people know anybody besides like the top guys.
I agree. I think that's why this fight, regardless of what happens with Fury, is a big fight.
And a lot of people don't know. And a lot of people don't know Usyk. To be honest, like a lot of people do not know Usyk.
Our producer put his hand up. He's not really sure who it is.
Like, a lot of people don't know don't know who Usyk is. A lot of people know who Tyson Fury is, but Usyk, he's a big name in the boxing world. But does he sell pay-per-views? Don't know.
Do you think more people know Tommy or Tyson?
I think a lot of people know. I mean, obviously
depends
Tyson.
on the generation.
Obviously Tyson, but if you go from like the influencer route and you say, okay, like they watch like guys like Bryce Hall fight, then yeah, like I think they know who Tommy Fury is. But
if you don't know who Tommy is Tommy Fury, is Tyson's half brother.
And he's a low-level boxer. He's not a good boxer. He barely beat KSI.
He barely beat KSI. Barely beat Jake Paul. He's trained boxing his whole life. I honestly
he's been training since he's 6 years old.
I would honestly not call him a professional boxer.
How do you only beat Jake Paul by split decision and you get a belt for it? And he's only been training for Jake Paul has only been training for 3 years until that fight.
I'll take his chiseled face though. He's a good-looking dude. I can say that as a masculine man. He's a good-looking dude.
Okay. Let's transition to the UFC.
My bread and butter.
The GOAT of MMA, John Jones. He's not fighting Stipe. He's got was it pectoral?
He tore his pec.
Yeah, so it's a pectoral tear, and he's going to be out for 8 months. So we're probably not going to see John Jones in the octagon for at least a year. And I don't know if that Stipe fight still happens because both of those guys are up in age, especially Stipe. And Stipe, that's the last fight he wants. And then I think he's going to call it. And same with John. I don't think he wants to fight anybody else besides Stipe. And then after that fight, I think he might be done. But if that fight is not there when John comes back, I could see him calling it quits. I could be like, you know what? I've done everything I need to do in the sport. I'm the greatest MMA fighter anyone has ever seen. I proved it. I came back after 3 years. I submitted Ciryl Gane in 1 minute and 30 seconds, which is just ridiculous. I mean, what do you think? Do you think John will retire if that Stipe fight's not available when he comes back?
No, I think he's going to fight. He's not going to allow himself to go out on the injury. He's too amazing an athlete, too prideful to say that's how I go out. He's going to want to fight one more time. He's also never had a chance to defend his heavyweight belt he just won, so I think he wants to prove it wasn't a fluke.
Yeah.
Can I preview Jones for a second? Can I preview Jones for a second? So Jones is a ridiculous 27-1 in the UFC with 1 no contest.
And the loss, honestly, doesn't really count for me because he lost by disqualification.
Yes. Thank you for calling that out. And you mentioned that as well. At UFC 285, he beat Ciryl Gane. He was the light heavyweight champion. He won 16 straight fights in the UFC. One more time.
And he's the youngest UFC champion
straight fights.
ever.
Yes. I remember watching him. I was super young. I was like, what the heck? So his 1 no contest was because he got caught with illegal substance in his blood after the fight. However, in new MMA rules, the amount of the substance in his blood would not be considered legal. So hypothetically, they say they should take that off his record and give it back. It was a fight against DC. Some of the names that John Jones has fought, he's one of the last people from the old guards who fought the MMA legends in the OG days to now the newer days. Stephen Bonner, who unfortunately passed away this year, rest in peace. Mauricio Rua, Quentin Rampage Jackson, he used to be actually my neighbor, and I used to watch him train all the time.
Rampage Jackson was a beast.
I could give you some.
Was a beast.
I can give you stories about Rampage. Kyoto Machado, Rashad Evans, who was my favorite fighter growing up.
Yeah,
Peter Belfort, Chael Sonnen, Alexander Gustafsson, who was the best fight. They say is one of the top 5 fights ever.
Yeah, that was
DC
the fight
twice.
He
in Glover
almost
Teixeira.
lost the first time, and then the second time he's like, you know what? I'm not going to party, and he just beat the crud out of him.
So that's why when anybody ever asks Dana White, the head of the UFC, who's the best fighter of all time, he says, without doubt, Jones. Suspended for multiple years, and he just other incidents with the law took him away from being able to fight. So that is Jones. You look at Stipe, he is actually ranked the #1 heavyweight of all time.
I agree with that.
His record's 20-4. He's only fought in title fights since 2016. He won the title in 2016 at UFC 198. He beat Francis, going back to Francis at UFC 220.
But he did get laid out the second time, though.
Yeah, and then he did a trilogy with DC. He lost the belt to DC, won it back, and then won it by decision. That was over the course of a year and a half. Then he got knocked out by Francis, and after that, he has not fought.
I have Stipe ranked as the 4th best UFC fighter of all time in my UFC top 10 of all time. Just putting it out there.
Who's your top 5?
Who's my top 5? I don't have my list in front of me. I forget. Okay. I know my GOAT is John Jones, of course. I can give you my top 3, though. Number 1's John, obviously. Number 2, Anderson Silva. Number 3, GSP.
So you
That's my 3. And then Khabib's 4.
No, you just said Stipe's 4. So.
Or no, Khabib's 5. Excuse me. Well, yeah, exactly. So that's why I couldn't give me my top 5 because I don't have my list in front of me. I'm Trying to do some improv here on the fly.
All right.
Put me on the spot.
I'll give you my top 5. Number 1 all time. I just can't choose John Jones because he got caught with steroids. And
No, don't pull that card.
So,
Please don't.
My number 1 all time is GSP.
That's crazy.
St. Pierre could do was next level. The way he just dominated people. He changed MMA. People before that were
John changed MMA.
No, GSP proved that you need to be a mixed martial artist.
John proved you could not even put 100% and still be the best of all time. That man never put it. That man has so much talent. He didn't even need to train. He was that good.
That doesn't change MMA. That's just talent. GSP showed you need to be well rounded because everyone pre GSP in those early light heavyweight days. No, I'm not. You're misreading my words. Pre GSP. So John was on the UFC yet. People were very one way. It was either you're a wrestler or you're a brawler. And when we say brawler, like punch hard. GSP came in and he was a mixed martial artist. He could do everything. And because of that, people had to redefine their game. He also, what he did, he was the first really MMA fighter to diet, train year round, not just train for a fight. And so it helped legitimize the sport and make the athletes change their way to compete with him.
I mean, I could argue John did the same thing, but we can agree to disagree on that.
Number 2, I would say Khabib. Number 3.
You put Khabib above John Jones.
I'm not putting John Jones on the list because he got caught with steroids. If that no contest is taken off his record, I will put him on the list.
No way.
Can
you know dang well it doesn't matter if he's on steroids. He's better than Daniel Cormier.
Do you put Alex Rodriguez on your top list of baseball players ever because he got caught with steroids? Do you put Barry Bonds as the best home run player ever because he got caught with steroids?
Well, yes, I do actually.
Does he deserve to have that record? Barry Bonds technically did never get caught.
It's a different topic. We're not going to get into baseball, but I'm just saying, for me personally, I don't think I just don't think you can't have him in there. You have to have him as the GOAT.
I'll put him at number 9. Put him at number 9.
Outside the steroids, like you can't hold him against him. He came back and beat Cyril Gahn after 3 years in a minute and 30 seconds.
I think he's an amazing fighter. He's an amazing fighter. But if I'm putting a list of my top 5 fighters,
and when you talk about elite kickboxing, John has got that.
Yeah,
elite kickboxing.
I'm not doubting that he does not deserve to be number 1. But my caveat for my personal list is if you get caught, steroids, sexual assault, abuse, whatever it may be. I'm not saying he did all that stuff.
But that's the fight game, man. That's the fight game. That's just how the fight game is. It's chaos outside the octagon. It just
taking steroids is cheating the game.
I'm not gonna dispute that.
So I
don't think that should dispute that he's the greatest of all time.
I used to live in San Francisco, and I used to live with a bunch of San Francisco people. And they were diehard Barry Bonds, ride or die. And I would debate them all the time, like he can't be number 1 on any list because of the implications with steroids. So we can move on, but that's just the only reason why John Jones is not number 1 on my list. I think he has the pedigree to, but when you get caught with steroids, unfortunately, that disqualifies you from my list.
Okay, we'll move on. Let's go to the light heavyweight division. Alex Pereira versus Yuri. Can you pronounce his last name for me? Can you assist me? No, Yuri.
Oh, Yuri Prochazka?
Yeah, I can't pronounce his last name. Some of these guys, I know who he is, but I have a hard time pronouncing his name. But that is a big fight because there hasn't been a consistent light heavyweight champion since John Jones. So who do you think wins that fight?
Yeah, so let's go back to the heavyweight real quick. Well, I need to do that to finish this off. So we talked about.
You can't let it go.
No, I'm not having. No, I just wanted to say what happened. So John Jones and Steve Perry is not fighting. So what does that mean? So 2 up and coming heavyweights who are around 30 years old.
It's on the same card, guys. If you didn't know,
Sergey Pavlovich is 18-1, is now facing Tom Aspinall, who's 13-3. They're fighting for the interim heavyweight. So the idea is they will get the interim heavyweight when Johns comes back. He will fight Stipe, who's going to wait, or he's going to fight these guys for the heavyweight title.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I actually
we need to make sure the fans know. And that fight is now on the card at Madison Square Garden, where John Jones and Stipe would have fought. Now that takes you to light heavyweight. Alex Pereira is fighting on Madison Square Garden 3 years in a row. His first fight in the UFC was on the undercard at Madison Square Garden. UFC 281. He faces off against Izzy, and we know
how that went.
That went highlight reel for Izzy in the knockout.
Yeah, just a mean left hook to the chin.
However,
I like Alex Pereira.
And then at UFC 287, That's where
No, because he fought him in kickboxing like a couple times and he lost both times.
Is it
In Pierre's career, he is now 3 wins, 1 loss to Izzy. Now, who is Izzy's mentor? One of his best friends, Glover Teixeira. Who did Glover Teixeira lose his belt to in the UFC as the light heavyweight champion? Yuri Prochazka. So now Yuri is fighting the protege to get his belt back that he lost, not to his fault of his own. He tore his shoulder during training camp for a fight, had to pull out. It's been gone for a year. Is now fighting Alex to reclaim the light heavyweight belt. So many storylines.
I think Alex is going to have to bring it a little bit more than he did in his last fight against Jan Blachowicz because he won by split decision. He didn't look as impressive as I thought he would in that fight. But I'm going to go with Yuri in this one. I think he's going to get the belt back after being injured. I think he's going to reclaim the throne.
If you like brawls, do not miss this fight. These people don't like taking people down. They're punchers. It's going to be a war. It's going to be so much fun. I'm going to call, I think Alex wins. Yuri's been gone for a year. You don't know how the shoulder's going to look. I think Pierre has one punch power. He's had basically another 6-7 months to really train. His natural weight is 225, 230. He was cutting to 185, which is wild.
Yeah,
now
back to what I was saying. When he was cutting to 185, he was going from 225 to 185. That is an insane weight cut. Like weight cutting is just, you're getting to the point where you're almost dead. Like that's how it is with some guys. Like they're draining themselves. They're like sitting in a sauna for 3 hours. They're just letting all this sweat just get their body weight down. It's insane how they do it. It's so insane.
So now he's at his natural weight. So I think in the second fight at the light heavyweight, he's going to be killing it. And you know who Alex beat? You said Sean Strickland. Who did Sean Strickland beat? Izzy. Who did Izzy beat and lose to? Alex. So much synergy.
It doesn't make sense. It literally didn't make sense.
So much synergy. I feel like that one meme when it's like science and it's a whole thing. We could put a whole map on the wall. Would have been good.
But oh yeah, did you see this? Alex Pereira said he wants to box in 2027.
He's 35, 36.
He says he wants to box in 2027. I saw a quote from it on Instagram.
He's got that puncher's power.
I've seen him sparring with boxers.
I'd be scared of him. If I saw him on the street, I would put my head down. I'd be like,
I would too. I'd be like, hey, you got this, man. You go ahead. All right. Anything else you want to say before we close out this pod? This has been a fire episode.
You think I had some good takes?
Hey, we disagreed on the John Jones thing. I don't know about that one, but other than that, yeah.
You never let me finish my top 5.
I'm not gonna let that one slide.
You want me to finish my top 5?
Okay, go. Okay, let's go top 5. So I said John.
Yes.
At number 1.
Yep.
Number 2, Anderson. Mm-hmm. Number 3, GSP.
Who also got caught with steroids, so I can't put him on my list.
Number 4, Stipe. And then number 5, Khabib. That's my top 5. Okay, now go with your top 5. I won't interrupt you.
So anybody with steroids cannot be on my list, unfortunately. So 1, GSP. 2, Khabib because of the undefeated record. I would have liked him to fight more, but I understand why he left. 3, I want to go with. Oh, that's gonna be really tough. I would like to think Kamaru Usman. I think he's in my top 3 for what he did at middleweight. The people he beat. He put out the division 3 different times.
He lost to Leon Edwards twice.
Towards the end of his career. That's okay. But you can't. What he did to that point was impressive. We'll see how he bounces back.
That is a very hot take. I would not put Usman near the top 10.
But look at his record before this point.
I think Volkanovski's better than Kamaru Usman.
No.
All time?
All time. Usman has more title fights than wins. Number 4.
You're going to put Kamaru Usman above Anderson Silva.
Yes, because of steroids.
That kills me, man. That is insane, dude. I am not going to be able to get over that. Go ahead.
That's okay. Number 4, I'm going to throw it way back. I'm going to a legacy fighter. Some of you may not know. His name is Mighty Mouse. You know who that is?
Yeah, Demetrius Johnson, of course. How do I not? Bro, you know what? I'm taking Khabib out. Demetrius Johnson's in my top 5.
A lot of people don't think about him, but flyweight.
He made the flyweight division a they were about to take that weight class out of the
Yeah.
UFC, and then he.
Sorry. Yeah, flyweight. Dude's unreal at his weight class. And then finally, my number 5. This is just going to be a very hot take, a personal favorite. I grew up on this man. He literally made me love fighting. BJ Penn.
Okay.
At the end of his
I
career,
don't hate that
The
actually.
end of his career kind of derailed what he accomplished,
but at the height, he was the it guy early UFC. The way his jiu-jitsu was next level. Nobody could touch him. And so I'm not going to think about the last 5 fights, but at his peak was higher than basically anybody.
Okay. All right. I didn't know we were gonna get into top 5 UFC fighters, but we did. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end the pod here. I'm your host Jackson Burleson, and check out Randy Silver's channel. I'm gonna put it in the description.
Randy
he does
Silver
a bunch
TV.
of vlogs and everything. You can shout yourself out.
Yeah, Randy Silver TV. I host a bunch of different sports stuff on my YouTube channel. I also do a bunch of sports reporting.
Oh yeah, he was at the Manny Serrano fight.
I was at the Manny Serrano fight. I'm trying to get credentials to the PFL championship. So
we're in sportscasting school together and
just trying to live the dream here. And hopefully we educated you today and you come back to listen to this podcast because it's really
sir.
fun.
Yes, sir. This has been another episode of the Take Podcast. Take care.
Talk to me, baby. Talk to me, talk to me, talk to me nice. I'm from another world, baby, yeah. Broadway paradise. They think I'm way too cold, cause I put my heart up.